The great meeting hall of Harmony Prime stretched out like a small city. 47 different species sat in their special seats, each designed for their unique bodies. The air hummed with translation devices, turning alien words into sounds everyone could understand. Giant windows showed the stars beyond. But today, no one looked at the beautiful view. Ambassador Sarah Chun walked to the center of the hall. Her black hair was pulled back tight, and her dark suit looked simple next to the colorful robes and shining armor of other delegates. She carried a small tablet in her hands, but she did not look at it. She knew what she had to say. The Galactic Unity Council had called this meeting to discuss a new crisis. On a planet called Kepler 442b, two groups were fighting a terrible war. Millions had died. Cities burned. Children starved. The council wanted someone to stop the fighting. They wanted humans to do it. This was not new. For 300 years, whenever there was trouble, the council called humans. When pirates attacked trade ships, they sent human soldiers. When natural disasters hit planets, they sent human rescue teams. When peace talks failed, they sent human diplomats to fix things. Other species contributed too, but in different ways. The Zephyrians made beautiful art and managed fancy trade deals. The Crystalline Collective built amazing computers and did complex math. The aquatic depth dwellers grew food in their underwater farms. But when something dangerous needed doing, when someone might die, the council always called humans. Sarah looked around the hall. She saw Chancellor Vomit of the Zephyrians, his golden feathers catching the light. His people lived on floating cities above gas giant planets. They thought themselves better than everyone else because their culture was so old and refined. She saw the representative of the Crystalline Collective, a being that looked like living crystal shaped into a tall, thin form. Its people thought in pure logic and math. To them, everything was just numbers and calculations. She saw Admiral Grix of the Hegemony, a bear-like creature covered in thick fur. His people were strong and brave, but they preferred to fight their own battles, not help others with theirs. All of them were looking at her now, waiting for her to say yes. Waiting for her to promise that human soldiers would once again risk their lives for people who would never do the same. Honored delegates, Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. The human delegation has reviewed your request regarding Kepler 442b. She paused and looked directly at Chancellor Vomit. This would be the 15th military intervention you have requested from humanity in the past 20 years. Our soldiers have served in your wars, stopped your conflicts, and died for your causes. The Chancellor's golden feathers ruffled slightly. Ambassador Chun, humans have always been well suited for such tasks. Your species adapts to conflict naturally. It is what you do best. Sarah felt anger rise in her chest, but her face stayed calm. What we do best, Chancellor, is whatever needs to be done. We've sent our children to die in wars that were not ours because we believed in the unity this council represents. She turned to address the entire hall. But unity means we all share the burden. Unity means we all take risks together. When did you last see Zephyrian soldiers in a combat zone? When did the Crystalline Collective risk their people to save strangers? The crystal being's voice came out like the sound of wind chimes. We contribute through technology and computational support. Our analysis shows that human casualties remain within acceptable parameters for mission success. Acceptable parameters. Sarah repeated the words slowly. You are talking about our people, our sons and daughters, our friends and family members. They are not numbers on your charts. Admiral Grix leaned forward in his massive chair. Human military doctrine is proven effective. Your tactical flexibility exceeds other species by significant margins. This is simply efficient resource allocation. Sarah's tablet made a soft beep. A message appeared on its screen. It was from her daughter, Lisa, A young soldier serving with the human peacekeeping force on Antares 7. The message was simple. Mom, we just lost 3 more today. When is it enough? Sarah looked up from the tablet. Around the hall, alien faces watched her with expressions she had learned to read over the years. Some showed mild irritation that this discussion was taking time. Others showed the cold calculation of beings trying to solve a problem with minimum cost to themselves. None showed grief for human losses. None showed guilt about asking others to fight their battles. The human delegation requests a vote, Sarah said clearly. We propose that military interventions be shared equally among all council species. No single species should bear the burden of galactic peacekeeping alone. Whispers filled the hall as delegates spoke quickly with their advisors. Sarah waited. Chancellor Varmont stood, his tall form graceful even in the artificial gravity. The Zephyrian Kingdom votes no. Our people are not equipped for such crude activities. The crystal being's voice rang out. The crystalline collective votes no. Our analysis shows current arrangements provide optimal efficiency. One by one, the other delegates stood and cast their votes. The Thermal Empire voted no. The Ice Clans voted no. The Gentlefolk voted no, saying violence went against their nature. 46 species voted no. Only Earth voted yes. Sarah stood in the silence that followed. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device. With careful movements, she placed it on the floor and stepped back. It was her translation unit, the device that let her speak with all the alien species in the hall. Around her, the other members of the human delegation did the same. The soft sounds of dozens of translation devices hitting the floor echoed through the great hall. Sarah looked up at the assembled delegates one last time. Her words came out in clear, unmodified human English, but she spoke slowly so the meaning would be obvious. You have forgotten that partnership requires mutual respect. We withdraw from the Galactic Unity Council, effective immediately. You will face your next crisis without us. She turned and walked toward the exit. Behind her, the other human delegates followed in perfect silence. They left behind their communication devices, their diplomatic credentials, and their seats in the Great Hall. The aliens watched them go. And for the first time in 300 years, no one called for human help. 3 days after the humans left the council meeting, Admiral Vaxstar of the Hegemony Fleet received a report that made his thick fur stand on end. Every human ship in the Andromeda sector had vanished overnight. The Admiral stared at his screen, reading the numbers again. 43 cargo ships, 15 research vessels, 8 diplomatic transports, 2 hospital ships. All gone, jumped to hyperspace without warning or explanation. Sir, his communications officer said, her voice shaking slightly. We're getting similar reports from all sectors. Human vessels everywhere are leaving. Vaxstar's claws tapped against his command chair. What about the peacekeeping forces? The officer's ears drooped. Gone too, sir. The human fleet protecting the medical convoy to Antares VI just stopped. They sent one message, saying mission parameters changed and jumped away. The convoy is alone now, across the galaxy. Similar scenes played out on 1,000 different worlds. Dr. Marcus Webb finished his surgery at Kepler Medical Station, saving the life of a young Thermal Empire citizen. Then he packed his belongings, deleted his patient files, and walked to the shuttle bay. The alien doctors who worked with him watched in confusion as he boarded a human transport. Where are you going? Asked Dr. Sylvan, a tall, blue-skinned being who had worked beside Marcus for 5 years. Marcus paused at the shuttle door. Home, he said simply. Good luck. The shuttle lifted off, leaving behind a hospital that suddenly realized half their surgical staff was human. On the research station orbiting Proxima 7, similar evacuations continued. Professor Elena Vasquez had spent 10 years helping alien students understand human psychology and culture. She taught classes about human literature, human music, and human ways of thinking. Her students loved her. Now she stood before her empty classroom, recording a final message. "To my students," she said to the camera, "I am sorry to leave without explaining everything. Your homework assignments are on the system. The final exams are canceled. Find new teachers. Learn from each other." She paused, looking sad. "I hope someday you will understand why we had to go." The message ended. Elena picked up her bag and walked to the shuttle bay, leaving behind years of work and friendships that could never be the same. But the biggest shock came from the military zones. Human peacekeeping forces had been spread across 17 different conflict areas, keeping angry species from destroying each other. They had done this job for so long that everyone forgot how important they were. On the border between the Thermal Empire and the Ice Clans, human mediators had prevented war for 30 years. The two species hated each other. Fire beings and ice beings could never share the same space safely. But human diplomats had created buffer zones and trade agreements that kept the peace. Commander Sarah Kim led the human peacekeeping base there. She received the withdrawal order while sitting in a meeting between thermal and ice representatives, trying to solve a trade dispute. "I apologize," she said, standing up in the middle of the discussion. "This meeting is over. All human personnel are leaving immediately." The thermal representative, a being that looked like living flame, flickered with confusion. "Leaving? But we haven't finished the negotiations." "You will have to finish them yourselves," Commander Kim replied. She walked out of the room, leaving the fire being and the ice being staring at each other across a table. With no one to keep them from fighting. Within hours, human bases across the border zone went dark. Evacuation ships arrived, loaded up personnel and equipment, and vanished into hyperspace. The buffer zone that had kept two species from war for 3 decades was suddenly empty. The most shocking discovery came when alien species tried to contact Earth directly. The Zephyrian Chancellor sent his fastest ship to the Sol system with an urgent diplomatic message. The ship's captain was confident. Surely this was all a misunderstanding that could be solved with proper conversation. The Zephyrian ship approached Earth's solar system and immediately triggered automated defenses. Warning beacons activated, sending a message in dozens of languages. The Terran Federation is no longer accepting diplomatic communications from Galactic Unity Council species. This includes all member worlds, associated colonies, and allied territories. Any vessel approaching the Sol system boundary will be destroyed without further warning. Do not attempt contact. The captain tried to send a response, but his communications were blocked. When his ship crossed the outer boundary marker, defense platforms powered up their weapons. The captain retreated quickly, his golden feathers trembling with fear. Similar defense networks appeared around every human colony, every human outpost, every human settlement throughout the galaxy. Overnight, human space became a fortress that no Council species could enter. On Council worlds, the impact became obvious very quickly. The trade station above New Harmony had been built around human logistic systems. Human traders understood the complex needs of different species. They knew that crystalline beings needed specific energy frequencies in their living spaces, that gentle folk required certain sound dampeners, that aquatic species needed water with precise chemical balance. Without human coordinators, the trade station systems began failing. A shipment of ice crystals meant for the Thermal Empire was accidentally delivered to the Ice Clans, nearly starting a diplomatic incident. Food meant for carnivorous species was mixed up with supplies for plant eaters, causing both groups to go hungry. Station manager Kilvin, a rational crystalline being, tried to solve the problems with logic and mathematics. But trade was not just about numbers. It required understanding what different people needed wanted, and feared. Humans had been the bridge between species that had nothing in common except their participation in the Council. The worst situation developed around the medical convoy heading to HFY. A terrible plague had struck the planet, killing thousands. The convoy carried vital medicine and medical equipment, but it had to pass through space controlled by pirates. Human warships had always escorted such missions. The pirates knew that attacking a medical convoy meant fighting human soldiers, and human soldiers never gave up, never retreated, and never forgot an attack on innocent people. Now the convoy traveled alone. Captain Zorvan of the lead medical ship sent desperate messages to any nearby Council forces, begging for protection. But the nearest hegemony fleet was 3 days away, and the crystalline collective ships were not designed for combat. The pirates struck 2 days later. They had been watching and waiting, amazed that no human ships guarded the valuable cargo. The convoys lacked defensive systems could not stop determined attackers. The last message from the convoy was brief. This is medical ship Mercy's flight. We are under attack. No human escort available. Cargo lost. Tell the people of Antares V, we are sorry. 30 million beings on Antares V waited for medicine that would never come. While pirates sold their stolen medical supplies to the highest bidder. In his office on Harmony Prime, Chancellor Vermette read reports from across Council space. Trade failures, military disasters, diplomatic breakdowns, infrastructure collapses, all because humans had simply left. For the first time in his long life, the proud Zephyrian leader began to understand what humanity had really meant to the galaxy. 6 months passed since the humans disappeared. The Galactic Unity Council told everyone that things would return to normal soon. They said human contributions had been helpful but not essential. They promised that other species could handle any problems that came up. Then the Void Stalkers attacked. The first warning came from deep space. Monitor Station 7. On the edge of Council territory. Sensor operator Linka, a member of the insect-like hive folk, was watching her screens when something impossible appeared. Ships emerged from the darkness between stars. Not from hyperspace, but from the empty void where nothing should exist. The ships looked wrong, black metal twisted into shapes that hurt to look at. They moved without any visible engines, gliding through space like predators hunting prey. Alert! Unknown vessels approaching Meridian Colony. Linka broadcast to the nearest Council fleet. They're not responding to communication attempts. I count. By the ancestors. One count over 200 ships. Admiral Grix of the Hegemony received the message while his fleet patrolled 3 systems away. His fur bristled as he read the report. In the old days, human rapid response teams would already be jumping toward the crisis. Human ships were fast, their crews were trained for emergency deployment, and they never hesitated to rush toward danger. Now, Admiral Grix had to organize a proper Council response. That meant sending messages to different fleets, getting approval from multiple species, coordinating different types of ships that were never designed to work together. By the time his message reached the Crystalline Collective's battle computers, the attack had already begun. The Void Stalkers hit Meridian Colony like a swarm of metal locusts. They didn't try to capture territory or demand surrender. They simply took everything they could carry and destroyed the rest. The colony's automated defenses were strong, but the attackers seemed to know exactly where to strike. Surveillance recordings showed the truth. The Void Stalkers were not just raiders. They were a hive mind species from the deep space between galaxies. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon was controlled by a single vast intelligence that could think faster than any individual being. Meridian Colony died in 6 hours. Admiral Grix finally arrived with his fleet 2 days later. The hegemony ships were powerful and their crews were brave, but they came alone. The Crystalline Collective had calculated that the risk was too high for their valuable vessels. The Zephyrians declared that military action was beneath their dignity. The gentlefolk refused to participate in anything violent. The Admiral found a dead world. The Void Stalkers had stripped away everything: useful metals, technology, food, and the colonists themselves. What they couldn't take, they had melted with some kind of energy weapon that turned solid matter into gray sludge. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving similar alerts from 6 other systems. The void ships have hit New Paradise, Haven's Rest, and the mining stations around Kepler-19. Admiral Grix stared at his tactical display. 7 simultaneous attacks across a huge area of space. In the old days, human intelligence networks would have predicted this. Human patrol ships would have spotted the attackers before they struck. Human commanders would have been ready with counterattacks. Now the Council was always reacting, always too late. Always trying to catch up to an enemy that moved faster than their bureaucracy. The next Council emergency meeting was chaos. Representatives from dozens of species argued about what to do. Everyone had opinions, but no one wanted to risk their own people. "We should negotiate with these Void Stalkers," suggested the representative from the gentlefolk. "Perhaps they simply need resources. We could arrange a trade agreement." The Crystalline Collective's delegate disagreed. "Our analysis shows negotiation has a 0.3% probability of success. These beings operate on pure consumption logic. They cannot be reasoned with." Chancellor Vomek preened his golden feathers. "The Zephyrian Kingdom suggests we hire mercenaries. There are many warrior species in the Outer Rim who would fight for proper payment." Admiral Grix slammed his massive fist on his desk. "While you debate, they're killing innocent people. We need a fleet. We need it now." "Very well," said the Council President, an elderly being from the long-lived Elder Folk. "All species will contribute ships to a joint task force. Admiral Grix will command." But organizing a multi-species fleet proved impossible. The elegant Elysians refused to serve under brutish hegemony leadership. Their ships were works of art, designed for beauty as much as function. And their crews were trained in graceful, ceremonial combat that looked impressive but had never faced real warfare. The aquatic depth dwellers brought powerful ships, but their vessels needed to be filled with water. They couldn't communicate properly with air-breathing species. And their sonar-based weapons interfered with everyone else's electronics. The plasma-based stellar phoenixes existed as energy beings who lived inside specially designed ships. They were incredibly fast and powerful, but they couldn't operate in the same space as physical matter. Their weapons would destroy allied ships as easily as enemy ones. Worst of all, the Crystalline Collective insisted that their battle computers should control the fleet. But the computers couldn't understand the chaos and unpredictability of real combat. They made perfect plans based on incomplete information, then became confused when the enemy didn't follow logical patterns. When the Joint Task Force finally reached the next Void Stalker attack, everything went wrong. The Elysian ships tried to perform beautiful, coordinated maneuvers that looked like a dance. The Void Stalkers ignored the pretty formations and concentrated their fire on the most vulnerable vessels. The depth dwellers' sonar weapons disrupted the Stellar Phoenix's energy forms, causing 3 allied ships to lose control and crash into each other. The crystalline battle. Computers kept trying to process new tactical data, but the Void Stalkers moved too fast and too unpredictably. The computers became stuck in analysis loops, unable to make decisions while the battle raged around them. Admiral Grix watched his beautiful multi-species fleet tear itself apart while the enemy laughed at them. The Void Stalkers didn't need to destroy the Council forces. The Allies were doing that job themselves. "Retreat," he finally ordered. All ships, withdraw immediately. The survivors limped back to Council space, leaving another colony to die. The Joint Task Force had lost 8 ships and accomplished nothing. In the aftermath, Admiral Grix sat alone in his cabin, staring at old battle reports. Every successful file in his database had one thing in common: human involvement. Human commanders who could coordinate different species. Human soldiers who could adapt to any situation. Human engineers who could make incompatible technologies work together. Humans had been the glue that held the galaxy together, and no one had realized it until they were gone. Outside his window, the stars looked darker than they used to. Somewhere in that darkness, the Void Stalkers were preparing their next attack, and this time, there would be no humans to stop them. 2 years had passed since the humans left, and the galaxy was dying. The Void Stalkers no longer bothered with quick raids. They had learned that the Council species could not work together, could not coordinate their defenses, could not even agree on basic strategy. So the hive mind changed its approach. Instead of hit-and-run attacks, they began a slow, steady invasion. System after system fell to the darkness. The Void Stalkers would arrive, set up collection bases on dead moons, then strip entire planets bare of resources. They took metals, gases, organic matter, and any technology they found useful. What they couldn't harvest, they destroyed. The Council's response was always the same: endless meetings, careful debates, and beautiful plans that arrived too late to save anyone. Commander Telvin of the Elysian Guard stood on the bridge of his art ship, dancing light, watching another colony die. His orders were to observe and report, not to engage. The Elysian High Command had decided that direct combat was too risky for their precious vessels. Through his ship's elegant sensors, he watched the Void Stalkers work. They moved with horrible efficiency, like machines designed for destruction. Children were loaded into transport ships, along with metal ore and food supplies. Families were separated and sorted by the hive mind's unknowable logic. "Sir," his communications officer said softly, "we could save some of them. Our weapons could break their transport ships." Commander Telvin's hand moved toward the firing controls, then stopped. "Our orders are clear. We observe only. One ship cannot make a difference against their entire fleet." But he remembered other battles, older recordings, where single human ships had charged impossible odds to save strangers. Human captains who ignored orders and safety and logic to do what was right. Where were they now when the galaxy needed heroes more than ever? The dancing light turned away from the dying colony, its beautiful hull reflecting light from burning cities below. Meanwhile, the economic collapse grew worse every day. Trade between species had become almost impossible without human coordinators. The thermal empire's heat farms produced energy that the ice clans needed desperately. But the two species could not negotiate directly. They literally could not be in the same room without one of them dying. Human traders had solved this problem long ago. They understood both cultures, could speak both languages, and could survive in both environments long enough to make deals work. They had built a network of neutral stations and transfer points that let natural enemies trade safely. Now those stations sat empty and dark on the ice world of Frost's Edge. Billions of tons of valuable ice crystals sat in warehouses while the miners slowly starved. The crystals were needed desperately on desert worlds throughout the galaxy, but there was no way to get them there. Captain Morse, leader of the Ice Miners Union, stared at his communication panel. He had been trying for months to contact potential buyers, but he couldn't speak their languages, didn't understand their customs, and had no idea how to arrange transport through hostile territory. "The humans used to handle all this," he said to his assistant. "They knew who needed what, where to find it, how to move it safely. We just mined the ice and got paid." His assistant, A young miner who had never known the galaxy before human withdrawal asked, "Why don't we learn to do it ourselves?" Captain Morse laughed bitterly. "Do you know how to speak thermal language without melting your vocal cords? Do you understand crystalline mathematics well enough to negotiate with their traders? Do you know the safe routes through Zikarian space, or the customs of the gentlefolk?" The assistant stayed quiet. The answer was obvious. Learning to replace humans would take centuries, and they had months before starvation killed everyone on Frost's Edge. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. The food-growing gentlefolk couldn't sell their crops to carnivorous species who needed meat. The metalworking hegemony couldn't trade with species who communicated through light patterns. The technology creating crystalline collective couldn't understand the emotional needs of organic species. Every species had developed amazing skills over thousands of years, but they had never learned to work with others who were completely different. Only humans had been able to bridge those gaps, to understand and communicate with everyone. The political situation was even worse. Without human mediators, old conflicts erupted into open warfare. The Thermal Empire and Ice Clans finally started fighting, just as Commander Kim had predicted. Their border worlds became battlefields where fire met ice in explosions that could be seen from space. The elegant Zephyrians tried to stay above the fighting, but their trade routes passed through war zones. Pirates attacked their merchant ships, knowing that no human rapid response teams would come to help. The Zephyrians' own military was designed for ceremony and intimidation, not actual combat. Chancellor Varmet stood in his floating palace, watching reports of his people's merchant ships being captured or destroyed. His golden feathers were dull now, no longer kept shining by expensive oils that could no longer be imported. "Perhaps," he said to his advisor, "we were hasty in our treatment of the humans." His advisor, an older Zephyrian who had lived through the early days of the Council, nodded sadly. "We thought they needed us more than we needed them. We forgot that being strong in war also makes you valuable in peace." The most heartbreaking attempt at reconciliation came from an unexpected source. The gentlefolk of Sanctuary Prime were pacifists who had never harmed another being in their entire species' history. They believed in solving problems through love, understanding, and compassion. Elder Harmony, the oldest of the gentlefolk, had an idea. If adults could not reach the humans, perhaps children could. Children were innocent. Children represented hope and future peace. They prepared a special mission. 50 young gentlefolk, their voices trained in the most beautiful songs their species knew, boarded a small, unarmed ship. The ship flew to the edge of human space, broadcasting messages of peace and love. The children sang songs about forgiveness, about friendship between different species, about the pain of separation and the joy of reunion. Their voices were pure and sweet, the kind of sound that could make even hardened warriors cry. The ship approached the boundary of human space. Still broadcasting the children's choir. Automated defense systems detected the approach. Warning beacons activated with the same cold message they had sent to every other species. Do not attempt contact. Any vessel crossing the boundary will be destroyed. The gentlefolk captain believed that surely the humans would make an exception for children. Surely they would listen to innocent voices singing about peace. The ship crossed the boundary. Line. The defense platforms fired without hesitation. The children's ship vanished in a flash of light, their songs ending mid-note. Elder Harmony wept when she received the news. Not for the loss of the children, though that pain was terrible. She wept because she finally understood. The humans were not being cruel or heartless. They were protecting themselves from people who had hurt them so badly that even children's songs could not reach their hearts. The galaxy had taught humans that their kindness would be exploited. Their help would be taken for granted, and their sacrifices would be forgotten. So they had become exactly what the galaxy had forced them to become: cold, distant, an unreachable dot in the silence that followed the children's deaths. Even the most stubborn council members began to realize the truth. They had not just lost their problem solvers. They had lost their conscience. 5 years after the humans left, Chancellor Vermette stood in what used to be the great meeting hall of Harmony Prime. Half the seats were empty now. Entire species had gone silent, either destroyed by the Void Stalkers or retreated into isolation to survive on their own. The beautiful station itself was falling apart. Without human engineers to maintain the complex systems that kept different environments working together, sections had failed one by one. The thermal zones were too hot, the ice sections had frozen solid, and the atmospheric processors couldn't balance the air mixture that all species could breathe. Vermette looked around at the few delegates who remained. Admiral Grix sat slumped in his chair, his thick fur now gray with stress. Most of his fleets were gone, destroyed trying to stop Void Stalker advances. The Crystalline Collective's representative flickered weakly. Their home systems had been captured, and this being was probably one of the last of his kind. "My friends," Vermette said, his once proud voice now quiet and tired. "We have one choice left." Everyone knew what he meant. For months, desperate council members had suggested contacting the humans. Every time, pride and stubbornness had won out. They had convinced themselves that humans would eventually come back on their own, that the crisis would pass, that they could solve everything without admitting they were wrong. But the Void Stalkers now controlled 1/3 of what used to be council space. Trade had collapsed completely. Billions had died in wars that humans could have stopped with simple mediation. The galaxy's civilization was ending, and everyone knew it. "We go to them," Vermette continued. "All of us. Not as proud representatives demanding help, but as beggars asking for mercy." The word tasted bitter in his mouth. Zephyrians had ruled star systems when humans were still learning to make fire. But pride was a luxury that extinct species could not afford. 3 days later, a small convoy of ships approached the boundary of human space. The vessels were old and patched, the best that the dying council could manage. No weapons, no escorts, no ceremonial decorations. Just survivors hoping for a chance to make things right, thought Chancellor. Vermette sent a message on all frequencies to the Terran Federation. "We are the remaining representatives of the former Galactic Unity Council. We come to formally apologize for centuries of exploitation and abuse. We have no right to ask for your help, but our people are dying. If any mercy remains in human hearts, please speak with us." For 3 hours, only silence answered them. Then coordinates appeared on their screens, directing them to a space station at the edge of human territory. The station was small and simple, nothing like the grand structures council species preferred. But it was clean, functional, and obviously built by people who cared more about effectiveness than appearance. Admiral Rachel Chun met them in the docking bay. She was young, probably in her 30s, with the same calm confidence that her mother Sarah had shown 5 years ago. Behind her stood humans in different uniforms, not just Earth military, but insignia from dozens of species the council delegates didn't recognize. "Chancellor Vermette," Admiral Chun said politely, "my mother told me about you. She said you called humans purpose-built for conflict." Vermette's golden feathers drooped with shame. "I did. I was wrong about many things." Admiral Chun nodded. "Yes, you were. Please, follow me. There are some things you need to see before we discuss any assistance." She led them through the station corridors. The council delegates expected to find humans living in isolation, perhaps struggling with their own problems after 5 years of separation from galactic society. Instead, they found something amazing. The corridors were filled with beings they had never seen before. Tall, Crystalline entities that looked similar to the crystalline collective but moved with organic grace. Floating creatures that seemed to be made of pure light. Small, friendly beings with soft fur and huge eyes who chattered in musical voices. "Who are these people?" Admiral Grix asked, staring at a group of liquid metal beings who flowed past them like living mercury. "Our new friends," Admiral Chun replied. "When humans left Council space, we didn't stop exploring. We went beyond the galactic rim into regions your people never bothered to visit. We found dozens of species who had also grown tired of the old ways of doing things." She stopped at a large window that looked out into space. The council delegates gasped at what they saw. Hundreds of ships filled the void outside the station. Not just human vessels, but designs they had never imagined. Ships that looked like they were grown rather than built. Vessels made of woven light. Craft that seemed to swim through space like fish through water. "We formed something new," Admiral Chung continued. "The Mutual Defense Compact. 57 species working together as equals. No one species does all the fighting. No one species bears all the burdens. Everyone contributes what they can, and everyone shares in both the costs and the benefits." Chancellor Vermette felt his world changing around him. 57 species? "But we thought you were alone." Admiral Chun smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like her mother. "You thought we were dependent on you. You never considered that you might have been dependent on us." She led them to a conference room where more revelations waited. The walls displayed star maps showing vast areas of space beyond Council territory. Trade routes connected hundreds of worlds. Defense networks protected entire sectors. Scientific research stations pushed the boundaries of knowledge. "What about the Void Stalkers?" Admiral Grix asked. "They're destroying everything. Can you stop them?" Admiral Chun's expression grew serious. "We've been studying them for 3 years. They're not unstoppable. They just seem that way because Council species could never coordinate properly. We've developed countermeasures. Weapons that disrupt their hive mind connections. Tactics that exploit their reliance on collective thinking." She touched a control, and the star map zoomed in on the edge of Council space. Red markers showed Void Stalker positions, but they were being pushed back by blue markers representing compact forces. "We've been quietly helping species transition away from Council dependency," Admiral Chun continued. "The survivors of New Paradise are now thriving under our protection. The remaining ice-cleansed settlements have joined our trade network. We're healing the damage where we can." Vormat's voice was barely a whisper. "You could have saved us all this time. Why didn't you?" Admiral Chun's expression grew cold. "Because you needed to learn. For 300 years you took human sacrifices for granted. You never appreciated what we gave you because you never had to give anything back. Pain was the only teacher that could reach you." She stood and walked to the window again. "We will help you, but not as we did before. The Galactic Unity Council is finished. If you want our protection, you join the Mutual Defense Compact as equal members. You share the burdens. You take the risks alongside everyone else. And if we refuse?" Admiral Grix asked. Admiral Chun's answer was simple. "Then you face the Void Stalkers alone, and your species will be extinct within a year." The silence that followed was broken by Chancellor Vermette's tired laughter. "You know what's funny? 5 years ago, we thought we were giving you purpose. We thought conflict was all you were good for." He looked around the room at the star maps, showing peaceful cooperation between dozens of species. At the humans who had built something better than anyone had imagined possible. "Now I see the truth. You weren't built for conflict at all. You were built for this, bringing different people together, making impossible partnerships work, creating something greater than the sum of its parts." Admiral Chun nodded. "Conflict was never our purpose. It was just the job you gave us because you were too proud or too scared to do it yourselves. She turned back to face the council delegates. So, what will it be? True partnership as equals or extinction in isolation? Chancellor Vermette looked at his fellow survivors. He saw the same answer in every face, hope mixed with humility, and the wisdom that comes too late, but still in time, to save something. "We choose partnership," he said. "As equals." Admiral Chum smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "Then welcome to the future. Let's go save the galaxy together." Outside the station windows, human ships began forming up alongside vessels from 56 other species. Preparing for the greatest rescue mission in galactic history, the age of exploitation was over. The age of cooperation had begun.